What do you mean 2 of our stores haven't had a manager present for over a week? Darren Lowell stared across the table, his fingers tapping against the wood, slow and deliberate. His operations director, a man in his 50s with a habit of dodging straight answers, shifted in his chair. District manager's been filling in remotely, the man muttered. It's temporary, we're short-staffed like everyone. Darren leaned back, jaw tight. We have 6 stores, not 60, don't give me like everyone. The room went silent. It had been 6 years since Darren bought the small fast food chain from a retiring husband and wife team. Back then, it had been 3 struggling stores and a lot of bad Yelp reviews. He'd turned it into 6 solid, profitable locations with a loyal customer base and a clear brand. But lately, things had started slipping again. Complaints about cold food, rude service, long waits, and most of all radio silence from store-level staff. He didn't like running things from a glass office. He never had, but expansion had pulled him upstairs and for a while it had worked. Until now. We're not growing if we're not solid at the base, he said. I want to see what's really going on. The room tensed. You're going to visit the stores? The ops director asked cautiously. No, Darren said. I'm going to work at one, undercover, the man blinked. You're serious? Darren nodded once. Pick me the busiest one, no manager, no heads up, I'll be Devin a new hire, entry level, put me in the system. He went silent for a moment. Let's see what happens when no one's watching. Store number 4 was a 20-minute drive from the edge of town, tucked between a gas station and a used tire shop. It was summer, hot and sticky. The kind of day where every car that pulled up wanted extra ice in their drinks. Darren parked a few blocks away, his old sedan rattling slightly as it shut off. He checked the mirror. Gone was the tailored suit. Instead, a faded black t-shirt, loose jeans, and a trucker cap pulled low over his graying hair. He'd even grown a patchy beard over the last couple weeks to finish the look. No one had met him in person at this store before. All hiring was done online. His fake references had passed with no issues. He pushed open the front door. The place smelled like fries and sweat. 2 teens behind the counter were arguing over the headset, one of them frantically trying to refill the soda machine. A chime rang as he stepped in, but no one looked up. After a minute, a short woman with a buzz cut and a clipboard appeared from the back. You the new hire? She asked. Yeah, Devin, Darren said. She didn't shake his hand. I'm Marlene, assistant. I'm doing what I can. Manager quit last Thursday, didn't even wait for his shift to end. Rough, you have no idea. She handed him a polo shirt. Clock in and grab a headset. Drive-thrus backed up to the street. By noon, Darren was sweating through his shirt. The kitchen was chaos. They were running with just 4 people. 2 high schoolers, 1 part-timer who clearly didn't want to be there, and a girl on the grill who barely looked 18 but was somehow keeping the line moving. Her name was Avery. No last name given. He watched as she flipped patties, dropped fries, bagged orders, and shouted corrections over her shoulder in a calm, steady voice. Mayo, not mustard, Lane. Carlos, I need 2 more chicken wraps. She didn't yell or snap, but she didn't stop moving either. Devin, she said suddenly, eyes not leaving the grill. Grab a broom. Someone spilled soda by the fry station, you'll slip. He nodded and moved. She didn't ask if he knew where the broom was, just assumed he'd figure it out by 2. The air conditioning had given up. Sweat dripped from his neck. The drive-through line hadn't dropped below 5 cars since he arrived. At 3, a customer came in yelling about a missing burger. Marlene tried to calm him, but the man was red in the face. Avery stepped in. I'll remake it myself, she said, voice firm. And I'll throw in a drink. You can wait over there, sir. The man blinked, still angry, but nodded and stormed toward a table. Darren grabbed a basket and helped her reassemble the order. You always like this? He asked, trying to sound casual. Like what? Calm, she gave a small laugh. No choice. If I lose it, the rest of them will fall apart. By the time the dinner rush hit, Darren had lost track of how many orders he'd packed. The fryer was shorting out. The ice machine was leaking. A kid on register had walked out without saying a word. Avery was still going. At 6:30, the headset beeped. "I've got a huge order," Lane groaned. "3 family packs, 5 shakes too." "I'll bag," Darren said. "You call it out." He moved quickly, packing fries, checking labels. Avery was next to him in seconds, helping without a word, and then the system froze. The screens went blank, all the pending orders vanished. For a second, no one moved, then Lane turned. "What do we do?" Avery looked at Darren. "You remember any of it?" "Some." "Good, let's rebuild it. Lane, take the shakes. Marlene, restart the system." "Devon, follow me." They recreated every order by memory and hand-scribbled notes, bagging each carefully, fast. When the customer pulled up an exhausted mom in a minivan with 3 kids in the back, Avery handed her the food with a smile. "Sorry for the wait." The woman blinked. "You remembered all that?" "Yes, ma'am. Have a good night." The kids in the back clapped. Darren watched as she exhaled and walked back inside, rubbing her temples. He'd seen enough, not just of Avery, but of what this store had been carrying on its own. Of what he'd let happen by staying too far away. Tomorrow he would come back, but not as Devon. Darren walked into the store early the next morning, this time in pressed slacks and a clean button-up. The same employees were there, but their reactions shifted sharply. Lane nearly dropped a tray. Marlene stared for a long second, then looked away. Avery, still tying her apron, froze halfway through the loop. "You're the..." Lane started. "I'm the owner," Darren said calmly. "I was here yesterday as Devon. Today I'm here as myself." The air dropped by several degrees. No one moved. A friar hissed in the background. "I need to speak with everyone before we open," he said. 15 minutes. We'll meet in the back. Marlene, you're included." She nodded slowly. 15 minutes later, they were gathered in the cramped back room behind the walk-in cooler. A folding chair wobbled under Lane as he sat. Avery leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes steady. Carlos, the part-timer, kept glancing toward the door like he might dart out if given the chance. Darren didn't sit. "I'm not here to yell," he began. "But I do need to understand what's been happening. Not through reports, not from district managers, from you." No one spoke. He turned to Carlos. "You've worked here how long?" Carlos scratched his shoulder. "Couple months, on and off." "I pick up shifts when they need me." "Do they need you often?" He shrugged. "Too often. I drive in from the east side. Gas eats up half the pay, but yeah, they call a lot." Darren nodded. "And you, Lane?" The teen shifted. "I only started a few weeks back. I do register mostly. Sometimes prep." "Do you feel trained?" "Not really," Lane admitted. "Avery taught me most of it. She wrote stuff down on napkins so I could study during breaks." Darren turned toward Avery. She said nothing. "Marlene," he said, "how long have you been running things without a manager?" 7 days, she said. But really more like 10. He'd stopped showing up for his scheduled shifts before he quit. Just called in or said he was working off-site. And no one from corporate followed up. Marlene looked down. "I sent emails, got told to figure it out." Darren exhaled slowly. "That ends now." He turned to Avery. "You're not technically a supervisor, correct?" "No," she said. "I'm crew like everyone else. You've been covering grill, coordinating orders, smoothing over customers, and directing new hires." "I'm trying to keep it running," she said, voice flat. "Do you want to be a manager?" Her jaw tightened. "No." "Why not?" She met his eyes. "Because managers burn out faster than the friars in this place. I've watched 2 walk out mid-shift in the last 6 months. I'm not interested in being next." Darren let that land before nodding. "Fair." He looked around at the group. "Starting today, I'm assigning someone from HQ to oversee this store temporarily until we hire a new manager. You'll have someone here physically to support you, not just calls, not just emails. In person." Carlos let out a breath. Lane looked visibly relieved. "I also want to hear suggestions," Darren said. "Not just complaints. What's one thing you'd change immediately if you had the authority?" Everyone hesitated. "Lane," Darren prompted. "Better headset batteries," Lane said quickly. "Half of them die mid-shift and we have to yell." "Customers hear it, it's chaos," Carlos nodded. "Seconded." "Avery," she paused for a long moment. "We need a second friar. Ours clogs constantly. Every time it stalls, the whole line backs up. Half the refund requests come from that, Darren nodded. Noted, he clapped once, not loud but enough to break the tension. All right, let's get to work. But understand this: what I saw yesterday can't continue. You're not alone anymore. I'm not disappearing after today. I'll be back, unannounced or not. That's a promise. The room stayed quiet, but something shifted. Not relief exactly, more like a cautious pause before the first breath after holding it too long. They filed out. By lunch, the temporary manager from HQ, Lana, a quiet woman with 20 years of field experience, arrived. She didn't bring a laptop, just a clipboard and a sharp eye. Darren stayed out of the way, watching from the corner near the mop sink. He didn't need to interfere. Lana moved through the kitchen like she'd been there a week, not an hour. She asked where things were instead of assuming. She made notes, but most importantly, she listened. I see your prep fridge's gasket is loose, she said to Marlene. Ice is building up. You reported that? Twice, Marlene said. Got told maintenance was backlogged. Not anymore, Lana replied, already writing a ticket. During the mid-afternoon lull, Darren stepped outside with Avery. She leaned against the rust-stained dumpster enclosure, sipping water from a cracked thermos. Do you ever get days off? He asked. She considered. I'm scheduled for 2, but usually I get called in. I say yes because if I don't, Carlos or Lane has to cover, and they're already stretched. How long have you been here? 14 months. You ever ask for a raise? I was told raises are based on formal reviews, but no one's done one since I started. Darren nodded slowly. What would make this job worth staying in? She didn't answer right away. Reliable crew, equipment that works, and someone who notices when we're drowning before we go under. He looked at her. I notice now. She gave a short laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. You did. Later that day, as the dinner wave built again, Darren stood by the register and watched. Lane was faster now, his voice steady. Carlos didn't vanish on his break. Marlene actually cracked a dry joke about the new freezer labels. And Avery, though clearly exhausted, moved like someone who finally had a second to breathe between steps. Lana pulled Darren aside near closing. They're decent, she said, but they've been abandoned. No structure, no escalation system, no accountability from above. It's not a store issue. It's systemic. I know, Darren said. We'll stabilize it, but you'll need to go higher upstream. This is happening in more than one spot. He nodded. I plan to. After the last customer left and the dining room was wiped down, Darren called Avery over. I want you to take tomorrow off, he said. She raised an eyebrow. We're short. Already covered it. Lana's bringing in 2 cross-trained staff from another store. You're off the clock, paid. She looked at him for a long second. Why? Because I asked you what would make this job worth it, he said, and I'm starting with trust. She didn't say thank you, just gave a small nod and walked back to the grill to finish wiping the stainless steel. Darren stood in the quiet store, the scent of cleaner in the air, the lights humming above. Things weren't fixed, not even close, but they'd moved. And for the first time in a long while, he knew exactly what needed to be done. The following week, Darren returned to the store 3 times. Each visit was unannounced, each lasting just long enough to observe without becoming a disruption. He didn't speak much, just watched. On Tuesday, the ice machine leaked again. Marlene had wedged a towel under the corner to keep the water from pooling near the register. On Wednesday, Lane missed part of the lunch rush. His ride had canceled last minute and there was no backup. Avery filled in without complaint, but her voice cracked by mid-shift from shouting over the fryer. On Friday, one of the food warmers failed. It hadn't been serviced in over a year. Lana wrote the repair order herself after confirming it wasn't logged properly in the system. Darren didn't need more proof. The issues weren't limited to this store, they were structural, baked into how the company had scaled. He called a meeting for Saturday morning, not at headquarters. Not in a boardroom. He booked out the closed dining area before opening and asked every district manager, senior team lead, and corporate support staff to attend. No screens, no presentations. This isn't a report out, he said when they arrived. This is a reset. Half the room looked confused. The other half looked uncomfortable. I've spent the last week working at Store 4 under a fake name, he said plainly. I watched a 19-year-old train new hires while fixing broken equipment with duct tape. I watched an assistant manager juggle 3 roles because no one followed up after a resignation. I watched customers walk out because we couldn't take their order fast enough. A few glances exchanged down the table, but no one interrupted. I heard excuses, he continued. Staffing shortages, supply delays, maintenance backlogs, and some of that's real. But a lot of it is us. We grew fast and we assumed the foundation would hold. It didn't. The district manager who oversaw Store 4 finally spoke. He was in his early 40s, sharp suit, laptop open in front of him. We've been reporting these gaps, he said evenly. The problem is volume. Everyone's stretched. Darren didn't raise his voice. If your store's been reporting issues for months and nothing's changed, then you're not stretched. You're broken. The room went still. From now on, Darren said, every store will have a direct escalation path for unresolved maintenance and staffing issues. That means if something sits unresolved for more than 72 hours, it gets flagged to senior ops. No more black holes. He turned to the HR director. I want a full review of our promotion pipeline. There are employees doing supervisor-level work without any formal recognition. That changes. We're implementing on-site evaluations, not just performance checklists generated from payroll. She nodded, already jotting notes. Darren paused, then looked at Lana. You've been in the field more than anyone in this room the past month. What do you need? Lana didn't hesitate. Authority to reassign floaters across stores without waiting for regional approval, and a spare equipment inventory. We're losing hours every week waiting for parts. Done, he said. You'll have both by end of next week. As the meeting ended, Darren noticed something. No one rushed out. People stayed in their seats, talking quietly, comparing notes. It wasn't relief, it was motion. And it was long overdue. He drove back to Store 4 around noon. The parking lot was half full. The line inside moved slowly but steadily. Avery was off that day, just as he'd insisted, but she'd left behind handwritten prep sheets. Not taped up, laminated with initials for each shift to sign off. Marlene was running the line with 2 new hires from another store. One of them fumbled a wrap order, and instead of correcting him, she paused the line briefly and walked him through how to fold it properly. Darren stepped into the back to check the equipment log. The gasket on the prep fridge had finally been replaced. So had the faulty headset batteries. The second fryer was still pending, but the order had been logged and accepted. He waited until the rush cleared, then stepped outside to call Avery. She picked up on the second ring. You on your day off? He asked. I am, she said. Why? Because I'm not calling about work. I'm calling because I'd like to meet with you Monday, not in the store, somewhere neutral, coffee shop maybe. She was quiet for a second. All right. Why? Because I want to offer you something, but I don't want you to feel like you have to say yes just because I own the company. She hesitated. Okay, Monday morning. Works for me. He hung up. On Monday, they met at a small cafe a few blocks from the store. She came in wearing jeans and a plain sweatshirt, hair pulled back, eyes wary. Darren was already seated. No laptop, no paperwork, just 2 coffees and a notebook. He gestured to the seat across from him. You're sharp, he said as she sat. But more than that, you're steady, you don't flinch when things go sideways, and you've earned the respect of people without asking for it. She didn't answer. I'm not offering you a store manager job, he said. You already told me you're not interested in that. I listened. Her shoulders eased just slightly. I want to create a new role, he continued. Field training lead. It's not corporate, it's not in an office, it's in stores. You'd visit locations, work shoulder to shoulder with staff, help onboard new crews, and report directly to me what's working and what isn't. She blinked. I'm not qualified for that. You are, he said. You just haven't been titled for it yet. She looked down at her coffee, stirring it slowly. Would I still be on payroll like now? It'd be a full-time role with benefits, paid travel, and a development path if you decide to grow it. She didn't speak for a long minute. "I don't want to become someone who forgets how hard it is on the floor," she said finally. "That's exactly why I'm asking you," Darren replied. She nodded. "Once, I'll try it," she said. "But if it turns into just another clipboard job, you walk," he finished. "Understood." They shook hands across the table. That week, Avery shadowed 3 stores. She didn't carry a clipboard. She wore a black polo and worked the line just like everyone else. But at the end of each shift, she sat with the team and asked what they needed. She didn't take notes, she remembered. And when she reported back to Darren, she didn't sugarcoat things. Store 2's night crew is dangerously undertrained. Their manager's too green to fix it alone. Store 5's fryers haven't been cleaned properly in weeks. Their shift lead says the cleaning chemicals were never restocked. Store 1's got potential. A guy named Malik on grill, he's a natural leader. No one's noticed. She didn't try to impress him. She just told the truth, and Darren listened. He knew it wouldn't be fixed in a month. Maybe not in 6. But the difference now was momentum and eyes on the ground. As he left store 4 late one evening, he paused by the kitchen door. Marlene was sweeping, humming low under her breath. Lane was restocking cups. Carlos, for once, was offering to swap a shift instead of dodge one. No one looked over when Darren left, and that, he realized, was the point. They weren't waiting on him anymore. They were building something without needing his presence. The foundation was starting to hold. 3 weeks passed. The changes Darren had pushed through were in motion, but friction was inevitable. Not everyone in leadership welcomed scrutiny from someone who'd just been flipping burgers under a fake name. A few middle managers grumbled about micromanagement from the top and claimed the stores needed autonomy, not interference. Darren didn't argue. He just kept showing up, quietly, unannounced. One morning, he arrived at Store 3, the highest-grossing location in the chain. It was clean, fast, and polished on paper, but Avery had flagged something off during a recent visit. She hadn't elaborated, just said it felt tight, like the staff were always watching each other instead of working with each other. Darren stood in the back corner of the kitchen for half a shift, watching. The numbers were good. Customers were served quickly. Orders were accurate, but the crew moved like machines. No one spoke unless they had to. There were no side glances, no casual jokes, no shared rhythm. Every action looked rehearsed. During a lull, Darren approached a tall man manning the wrap station. "You Malik?" The man nodded once, wiping his hands on a towel. "You've been here a while, little over a year. You like it?" Malik looked past him toward the cooler door. "I get paid on time." "That's not what I asked." Malik hesitated, then lowered his voice. "We run clean, numbers are right, that's all the manager cares about." "Who's the manager?" "Briggs." A woman stepped out of the office as if summoned by name. She was in her 30s, thin frame, sharp eyes. She didn't acknowledge Darren, just called out to Malik. "You're behind on restock. I'm working the line." "Then move faster." Darren watched as Malik turned back to the prep table without a word. Later that day, he pulled Avery aside outside the store. "You were right," he said. "The place runs like clockwork, but no one breathes." She nodded. "Briggs doesn't raise her voice, doesn't need to. She keeps people scared in quiet ways, cuts hours without warning, posts schedules last minute. Tells people they're replaceable. She doing anything illegal? No, just enough to make people stay quiet. Crew turnover's high, but no one complains when they leave. They just disappear." "Who's her supervisor?" "Grant, district lead for the north side." "He likes her because she hits targets." Darren didn't respond right away. He returned to headquarters the next morning and pulled every quarterly report from Store 3. Numbers were flawless. Labor costs low. Food waste minimal. Customer feedback neutral, never glowing, never terrible. That was the red flag. He called Grant into his office. "Store 3's a problem," Darren said as the man sat down. Grant adjusted his cufflinks. "In what way?" "It's too perfect, and people are scared to speak." Grant gave a quick shrug. "Some managers run a tight ship." "Briggs gets results." "At what cost?" "Look, I understand you've been doing your rounds and I respect that, but we can't treat every store like a therapy session. Some crews respond to structure. Structure's not the issue. Fear is. You're confusing compliance with culture. Are you planning to replace her? I'm planning to talk to her. Directly, Grant shifted. That's not protocol. Darren leaned forward slightly. Neither was going undercover in my own company. But here we are. He drove back to store 3 that afternoon, walked past the counter and asked for Briggs. She met him in the tiny back office, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I've been reviewing your store, Darren said. Numbers are excellent. But your team's burned out. They're efficient, she said, and disciplined. That's why the numbers are good. They're quiet, not efficient. I've seen efficient. This is fear. Briggs didn't flinch. With respect, I'm not here to run a daycare. I'm here to hit targets. And they're hitting them despite you, not because of you. She narrowed her eyes. Are you accusing me of something? I'm pointing out that if everyone under you is afraid to speak, something's wrong. People don't leave quietly unless they've stopped believing they'll be heard. Briggs said nothing. I'm not firing you, Darren continued, but I am assigning a peer review. For the next 4 weeks, Avery will spend 2 days a week here. She'll work shifts, speak to the crew, and report directly to me. Briggs's jaw tightened. So I'm being babysat. You're being evaluated, not based on numbers, based on people. That evening, Darren called Avery. Store 3's yours for a month. I want the truth, not just what's broken. What's salvageable? I'll give it to you straight, she said. I know. Over the next 4 weeks, Avery embedded herself into the store's rhythm. She didn't confront Briggs. She didn't challenge the structure. She just worked, side by side with the crew, during prep, during rush, during cleanup. And slowly they opened up. One evening, while breaking down the fryer line, Malik spoke first. She watches the camera feed from home. Avery didn't look up. Briggs? Yeah, one time I took an extra 2 minutes on break. She messaged me before I even clocked in. A few feet away, a girl stacking sauce packets added, she schedules people for 6-hour shifts so we don't get meal breaks. She tells the new hires if they ask questions, they slow everyone down, said another. Avery listened, took no notes. Just nodded. At the end of the month, she met with Darren in a closed office at headquarters. She's not abusive, Avery said, but she's strategic. She uses policies to push people to the edge without crossing the line. The crew performs because they're afraid of being replaced. Can she change? She doesn't think she needs to. Darren sat back. All right. He scheduled a second meeting for later that week. This time, Briggs, Grant, Avery, and Darren all sat at the table. I've reviewed the findings, Darren began. Briggs, your numbers are solid, but your leadership approach violates our company's direction moving forward. There are no policy violations, Briggs said. No, but there's a difference between policy and principle. Grant cleared his throat. What are you proposing? I'm transferring you, Briggs, Darren said. You'll take on a training role for 6 weeks at our development store. You'll shadow a different manager. Observe, learn, Briggs scoffed. You're demoting me. I'm giving you a chance to adapt. If you choose not to, the path forward will be clear, but I'm not replacing results with resentment. She looked toward Grant, but he said nothing. Darren turned to Avery. While she's away, you'll act as interim lead at Store 3, full authority. I want to see what the store can become when people aren't afraid. Avery didn't react, just nodded once. 2 weeks later, Malik sent Darren a message through the internal portal. It was short. People are laughing again. Didn't realize how quiet we'd gotten. By the end of the 6-week period, sales hadn't dropped. Labor costs went up slightly, but so did repeat customer ratings. The crew felt visible. The atmosphere shifted. Darren visited unannounced and stood near the back door listening. Someone was singing. Not loud, just a soft tune over the grill hiss. But it was the first time he'd heard music in that store that wasn't from a speaker. Briggs returned from her rotation subdued. She didn't ask for her old store back. Instead, she requested a transfer to a different region. Darren approved it. Quietly, no fanfare, no speech. The company wasn't perfect. It never would be. Stores still had gaps, schedules still needed juggling, but the culture was bending, not by force, not by fear, but by example. Avery continued in her role field training lead. She visited stores, rode the line, spoke to crews. She didn't carry a badge, she didn't need one. Everyone knew who she was. And Darren, for the first time in years, no longer felt like a spectator in his own company. He didn't need to go undercover again. He'd already brought the truth back to the surface.